many G-scale model railroading enthusiasts, the hobby began with a circle around a Christmas tree. But for some of us, it didn't stop there. To add a few more cars, more track, and maybe some switches was easy. Just head on over to your local hobby shop. But then there's the matter of the environment itself. Roadbed, mountains, tunnels, a place to build that empire. Various bits and pieces can be found, as well as a number of excellent how-to books. But they all start at the lumber yard, which ultimately leads to plywood, 2x4s, saws, screws, nails, sawdust, and an incredible amount of time and expertise. All this to create the basic environment for those buildings, people, and trees. Well, how about if you could fabricate the basic layout? Roadbed, mountains, tunnels, track, and ballast in a fraction of the time of conventional techniques, with materials that won't rot or rust, that are suitable for both indoor and outdoor applications. We're going to take a step-by-step look at how this layout was built by expanding it outdoors. Soon, this empty deck will be home to Telluride, Colorado, an extension of the indoor Christmas layout. The RailQuest system utilizes die-cut polypropylene roadbed sections, which are laminated with sound-absorbing cork. These interlocking roadbed sections correspond exactly to LGB track specifications. They're so accurate that they can be used as a design tool, and you can be sure that your track will fit perfectly. RailQuest 11.5-inch U-shaped risers are formed from die-cut polypropylene. These risers and posts can be used to elevate roadbed and create tunnel portals. In this video, you'll see how to combine these components with polypropylene sheets and terrain strips to create your dream layout faster than you ever thought possible. Literally, hundreds of feet of roadbed can be snapped together in a couple of hours, while track remains protected in its box until construction and painting are completed. In all likelihood, several roadbed sections will have to be trimmed for your layout to go together properly. You probably won't have to do much of it, but it must be done correctly. Unlike cutting down track, the roadbed should have a section removed from the center to retain the use of the puzzle end. Now be sure to maintain the radius of curved pieces by using another identical piece as a template to mark the section to be removed. You can alter the length of the piece, but not the radius, and the corresponding track will still fit correctly. Using a metal straight edge and a hobby knife or wood carving knife, make gradual straight cuts. Making several passes with a knife at less than full pressure is safer and will result in a cleaner cut than applying too much pressure with fewer passes. Take your time. These knives are very sharp. Once the cuts are completed, remove the unwanted section and, while holding the two ends together, apply hot glue to the open flutes or channels in the polypropylene. When joined, the molten glue will flow between the pieces for a secure bond. Align the pieces and move slowly until the glue cools and your custom section is completed. Once you are satisfied with your roadbed configuration, hot glue the sections together. You are now ready to install the polypropylene base plate. Simply slide the 2-foot by 4-foot sheets under the roadbed and butt them tightly together. Accurate alignment is important, so check this before gluing. While holding the pieces in place, apply a liberal amount of hot glue to the 3-inch by 3-inch reinforcement squares which are used to splice base plate sections together. Apply pressure and again keep an eye on alignment. Be liberal with both glue and reinforcement squares. Too much is better than too little. Continue to install base plates and connect them with the reinforcement squares. Ultimately, all 2x4 sheets should be securely attached with reinforcement squares. This polypropylene base plate represents the foundation of your layout and its exterior dimensions. Any base plate which extends beyond the edge of the layout can be trimmed later. It's now time to fabricate the risers to elevate the roadbed. Once cut to size, hyperextend the hinges of the risers so they hold a triangular shape and then slide the jigs over the triangular sections to temporarily hold them in position while gluing. 2 per section is fine. Generously apply hot glue to the seam. Neatness doesn't matter much here unless you are interested in using a riser as a visible portal. You can set the newly glued riser aside. Prepare another one while the glue cools. Then slide the jigs off to finish the riser. Apply glue into the flutes prior to folding the riser into its final U-shape. 2 headless nails in your workbench, spaced the width of the top of a riser, will enable you to easily and consistently glue each riser in a square position. Bringing the bottoms flush to the edge of the board or workbench helps keep them square. Now, back at the layout. Install the risers by applying glue the width of the roadbed. Position under the roadbed. Apply pressure and some sort of weight. Finally, a use for those old barbell plates. Continue to install the risers at every other roadbed joint, gluing only the top of the risers at this point. Risers can be installed at any angle to accommodate future terrain or right-of-way for lower roadbed. Don't worry that things may seem somewhat flimsy because the strength of the RailQuest system comes from the additive process. Your finished layout will be both strong and lightweight. Posts are not as structurally sound as risers, but can be used at roadbed joints, in between risers, or anywhere you feel that you need a little added support. Weights can then be removed so that hot glue can be applied to secure the risers and posts to the base plate. Lift the riser or post and use a liberal amount of glue. Be sure you are satisfied with the position of the roadbed. Weights are used again to apply pressure until the glue cools. Continue this process until all elevated roadbed is secured into position. Reinforcement squares can be used for minor height adjustments, and risers can be used full length or cut down to virtually nothing. You might want to consider raising the roadbed one thickness of base plate material to accommodate wiring and facilitate drainage. Much like a house under construction, the layout is susceptible to damage at this point, so you should protect it against excessive water and sun until construction is complete. Grade should never exceed 3 degrees. But remember, this is a rule of thumb and is affected by heavy loads and wet track. The barbecue cabinet is an interesting and very accessible tunnel. Cabinets like this are great for storing locomotives and rolling stock. If you're creating a modular layout and would like to move into a more comfortable environment to complete construction, now is the time to cut the layout into separate modules. Be sure sections are cut apart in a manner which allows the track sections to reconnect directly into one another. Also, be aware that modules over about 6 feet can become very cumbersome. Roofing nails or tape should be used to reassemble the modules. They should have adequate support at separation points to assure accurate track and scenery alignment. Elevating the layout makes completion easier on your back, but it is obviously not necessary. We began to install the vertical walls at the point where the layout butts up to the outdoor grill cabinet. Mark the point where the glue will stop. Take care not to touch the tip of the gun or molten glue. They don't call it hot glue for nothing. Apply along the edge and bottom of the piece. Then carefully put in position and apply pressure and wait for the glue to cool. These vertical supports should be installed every 2 feet or so, and once again, too many is better than too few. The resulting strength will be worth it, and additional weight is negligible. Custom shapes such as triangles can be used. Leave a 6 mm space from the vertical support to the edge of the base plate as a footing for the vertical wall. Check the fit of the wall and the line, which will become the top of the terrain. It could be cut after installation, but is probably easier to do on a flat surface. Cutting freeform shapes out of the fluted polypropylene sheets is tricky but possible. Go fairly light on pressure when cutting. Several passes with the blade is easier, more accurate, and safer. Apply glue across the base plate along that 6mm space which you left earlier. Position the vertical wall and allow the glue to cool. Continue to install the vertical walls in the same manner. Measure both the portal for the roadbed to connect to the indoor layout and the length of the walls. Check everything carefully before you cut. A carpenter square is useful for cutting right angles, but any metal straight edge will do. Precision cutting is not always mandatory, but it is a good idea to be as accurate as possible. It's easy to cut at right angles to the flutes in the polypropylene or with the grain down the center of the flute, but it still takes several passes with the knife. The wall is then carefully glued into position. After the connection between the wall and the base plate is cooled, you can secure the wall to its vertical supports. Use plenty of glue. It's cheap and we don't count off for neatness. Use a riser for the portal which connects the indoor and outdoor layouts. Glue the feet first and come back and attach the wall later after the feet cool. Across the top edge of each wall, attach a RailQuest 1" by 4" terrain strip. Apply the glue to the edge. Again, neatness doesn't matter here as this will ultimately be covered. Position the strip at right angles to the top edge of the wall and secure with large T-pins. Have the terrain strip follow the shape of the wall as much as possible, but a few gaps here and there are okay. Continue this across the top of the wall. Once cooled, grab the T-pins with a pair of pliers and remove. The pins can be reused many times, so you only need about 20. The terrain strips are then attached with hot glue and a couple of clothespins. Continue to glue the terrain strips at about 4 inches apart. Use them full length and trim them down with scissors later to the appropriate size. Secure the other end of the terrain strip to the bottom of the roadbed and weave another through at right angles, essentially basket weaving the basic shape of your terrain. Holes should be just large enough to get your hand in. Secure the end and each intersection with glue, clothespins, or other clamps. Don't get too anxious about the exact shape of the terrain. With scissors and the glue gun, you can add, subtract, make flatter, taller, and so forth if need be later. You may want to use stronger clamps in areas such as attachments to roadbed. Terrain strips are attached to the sides of risers which will become tunnel portals. While the basic look is a basket weave, the irregular shape of natural terrain will obviously disrupt the pattern. Ultimately, you'll find yourself removing the last clothespins. The basic shape of your terrain is established. Changes can be made easily at this point by adding or removing sections of terrain strips. Make sure all areas have enough structural integrity to support the wet synthetic stucco which will cover the terrain strips. For lower roadbed, terrain strips can die into the base plate to make a smooth, natural transition. While it isn't prototypically correct, it's fun to have trains run fairly close to the mountains. But be careful of clearances, particularly on tight curves. Sheets of polypropylene work well for flat areas. They have enough flex to them to simulate the natural rise and fall of roads. This area is going to be a step, so it is reinforced with plywood inside to support the weight. It's easy to have little undeveloped terrain areas like this wherever you think is appropriate. This portion of the layout is inaccessible because of the deck railings, so a very large reinforced hole allows access to the rear of the mountain. Notice that this large span of terrain strips is reinforced with PVC pipe, which are only tacked in with glue in case they are in the way later and need to be moved. So now the entire roadbed and terrain framework is completed. in a fraction of the time of conventional techniques. There are a number of materials available to create the skin of interior mountains, but for outdoor use, we recommend synthetic stucco over bed sheets. Run a bead of glue along the edge of the roadbed, about 2 feet at a time. Attach the edge of the bed sheet to the roadbed, overlapping about a ½ inch, and smooth down as much as possible. By the time you have finished smoothing it down, it'll be cool enough to pull the sheet back and apply glue to the terrain strips. This glue is just to hold the sheets in position while the stucco is being applied, so use as little or as much as needed to accomplish that objective. Then put the sheet back into position and pat into desired shape. Don't get too anxious about the exact shape, just so long as it could have occurred in nature. Besides, its final shape can change with the application of stucco anyway. Cover all but the completely flat areas with the sheets. Cutting, splicing, and patching are fine, but a good attachment of the roadbed is important to the future weather resistance of the layout. In some cases, it's easier to start at the top of the terrain and work toward the roadbed. Pull back the sheet and attach a little at a time while shaping the mountains. Use the sheets to make the transition between the roadbed and the base plate flat areas. On the back side of the vertical walls, wrap about 1.5 inches of the sheet to assure a solid connection between the wall and completed terrain. Notice the strategically placed access holes reinforced with risers. When in doubt, put in another access hole. You'll thank yourself later for both wiring and derailed trains. Mark module separation points with T-pins so you can locate them after stucco has been applied. Work the sheets up to the portals. Notice that all edges of the roadbed are covered with sheets except for overhanging sections, which will ultimately be finished off with a RailQuest bridge railing. Make certain that the sheets are secured to the roadbed or terrain strips. It's easier to do that now rather than while working with a synthetic stucco. Having a handful of stucco fall through an unsecured sheet makes a mess. Once all sheets are secure, you are now ready to apply the stucco. Working with synthetic stucco is a little like working with mud pies which won't wash out, ever. This stuff really sticks. Anyway, wear gloves, old clothes, and get after it. Minimize the amount of stucco spilled onto the roadbed. A little is okay, but try to keep it as clean and smooth as possible. Synthetic stucco is available at masonry supply houses and has the advantage of being an exterior grade construction material which has a bit of flex to it. This flex allows it to be applied in much thinner applications than regular stucco without cracking. The first coat of synthetic stucco should completely cover the sheet, but be as thin as possible. This will minimize the risk of having terrain distort or collapse under its own weight while drying. It will dry in 36 to 48 hours, depending on weather, and feel like a drum skin. Once the first coat is dried, a thicker second coat is applied, generally about 1/8 inch thick, but it can be a little thinner or much thicker if needed. As you work the stucco, you'll see that it naturally wants to look like rocky terrain. So your primary role is to apply the material evenly and avoid any shapes or patterns that wouldn't likely occur in nature, like handprints. This material has a long work time and is very malleable when wet, but its personality changes dramatically when it dries. While synthetic stucco is an exterior grade material, it should be sealed with exterior latex paint. We suggest an initial application of medium brown covering virtually everything. Peaks can be left unpainted if they are to be snow-capped later. Don't worry much at this point about the artistry of painting terrain, just good coverage of the basic color. Rather than brush it on, you may have to jab it on to fill the nooks and crannies. There are any number of great books on the subject of landscape detailing beyond the scope of RailQuest or this video, but this is a fast, easy way to a realistic finish. You can make your layout much more detailed. It's up to you, but latex paint over synthetic stucco is a good place to start. You can get a lot of depth with 2 shades of brown and a very dark, almost black, for shadow areas. Obviously, you are free to model rocks of different colors other than those we are using. You might even tie in with some natural rocks to be used in your layout. Take the rocks to the paint store and have the colors custom mixed. Blend the synthetic stucco and the paint into the natural rocks. Shadow areas are added with the diluted black or very dark brown paint. This paint should be diluted enough so that it runs down into the crevices, which would be in shadow. If you apply it when the other paint is wet, you'll have softer transitions between the light and dark areas. You now come back with a lighter brown highlight color. Once again, if the base coat is still wet, the colors will blend together, creating a softer look with a greater variety of colors. Experiment a bit with wet and dry brush until you get the look you want. You'll be amazed how easy it is to create realistic synthetic rocks. The white areas may look okay, but they need to be finished with white latex paint, and you definitely want to be sure that all rock colors are completely dry before applying the white snow, unless you are going for that slushy spring thaw look. Again, to assure coverage, you may find yourself jabbing the paint on in some areas rather than brushing it. Horizontal areas can be solid snow, but more vertical areas will have more exposed rock. Apply white paint with light downward strokes only, building layers until you get the desired snow coverage. Installing the track is fast and fun since the roadbed is patterned according to track dimensions. To assure proper fit, be sure the track is placed in the middle of the roadbed. We recommend that you lay out the track completely and then apply LGB conductive paste before securing track to the roadbed. Hot glue should be applied under the ties every 6 inches or so. Position the track in the center of the roadbed and wait until cool. Securing the track mechanically, such as with nails, doesn't work with polypropylene and is less flexible. By the way, electric trains really run funny if you leave a metal weight somewhere on the track. RailQuest ballast is a very lightweight volcanic rock. If you prefer smaller pieces, it can be crushed easily. Apply directly over track and brush it into the desired position. Take your time with the ballast. It can add a great deal to your layout and make toy track and trains a lot more realistic. Ballast should be close to the top of the ties but not covering them. It works fine outdoors, but will blow away easily if not secured. An ear syringe is about the right size to apply the adhesive. A turkey baster is too big. While diluted white glue works fine indoors, Quickcrete Concrete Acrylic Fortifier is the only adhesive we have found which works outdoors. Use full strength with 2 coats to create a ballast which will withstand rain and your leaf blower. Buildings and other structures can be integrated into the landscape, yet removed easily by either burying a removable base in the synthetic stucco or by making a footprint of the structure. Coat the building base with non-stick cooking spray and allow stucco to dry completely before removing the building. RailQuest risers make reasonably realistic, inexpensive portals when painted. Our bridge rails attach with hot glue to the sides of roadbed to add realism and structure to unsupported spans of roadbed. They can be attached to one or both sides, depending on the situation. Electrical work and other detailing is beyond the scope of this video, but automobile accessory lights make excellent, inexpensive lighting. Quick disconnects are a big plus. Lamp bases look realistic and can hide electrical connections. A light coat of synthetic stucco over polypropylene sheets creates a realistic-looking asphalt road. Imperfections only add to the realism. You might want to rename businesses after friends. In fact, making the whole layout custom and personal is half the fun. The completed basic layout can be cut apart to be moved. A hobby knife and hacksaw blade should be all that is necessary. Make sure that you have enough support at these seams so that they stay in alignment when reassembled. Modules can now be moved and reassembled outside. With your basic layout built, detailing is limited only by your imagination. Mountains can become fields and vice versa with a quick cut, more terrain strips, synthetic stucco, and latex house paint. Now, obviously, a RailQuest layout does not build itself, but we provide the building blocks, the system for you to create your own custom layout, quickly, predictably. RailQuest makes this aspect of building a layout fast and fun, and you'll be running trains sooner than you ever thought possible. So when was that you were planning on building that dream layout? Well, how about this weekend?